Okay, Meretz Hashem, tonight we're up to the next chapter in the Halachot of Pesach. Last week we concluded with all the detailed laws of matzah eating, what matzahs to buy, the differences between the different types of matzahs, and how to fulfill the mitzvah on the night of Pesach. We're going to now begin the subject of kosher for Pesach foods and products. What things people have to be careful in when they purchase, when they put in their mouth. If people have to be careful with inedible products, shampoo, soap, perfume, cosmetics, medicinal creams, medicines, vitamins, and kidneys, and all those things we will be discussing. I just want to point out, last week and 2 weeks ago, we touched base on the matzahs, certain matzahs that are made with special machinery. Remember we discussed that?
Yes, we did.
Right. So I actually found a picture from 1855, and it's actually printed in the new book, of a matzah machine of back then, and it's practically identical to the machine that I showed you guys. So that's quite interesting. So have it there in the book to compare the two machines to each other.
Technology.
Okay. So what makes a product kosher for Pesach? So people think, just that it doesn't have chametz in it. True, not so simple. Yes, if a product doesn't have chametz in it, doesn't have kidneys in it, it is kosher for Pesach. The question is, how do you know? How do you know if something doesn't have chametz in it? So you can have a few approaches. You can say, well, I never saw them put chametz inside. It doesn't list the word chametz in the ingredients. All this does not help. We're going to now learn, according to halacha, what requirements are necessary to make a product kosher for Pesach to be allowed to be eaten. So kosher for Pesach food needs to fulfill the following conditions. Number one, obviously does not have a chametz ingredient and has not been infiltrated by chametz. This is, of course, the most important and one of the most difficult ones to ascertain. Simply by reading the ingredients in a product does not guarantee us that there isn't chametz inside, especially in today's complex food industry where there are so many trace ingredients, meaning ingredients that are less than 2% and do not have to legally be listed on the ingredient list on the package that may contain chametz. Chametz is an amazing product to create many, many different things. 5 grains can be used to create many different things that are in food products. And so anything that doesn't have an hashgacha has a very strong suspicion that it may contain a trace ingredient of chametz. Furthermore, you can have generic terms such as flavoring written on a product which can be made from chametz. You can have, when it's written on a product, that it has fragrance that can be made from chametz. There's various terms that don't say the word chametz and they may contain it. Citric acid, which a lot of foods have, drinks have them a lot. They can be made from chametz, and many of them are made from chametz. So once again, these are just things that people don't pay attention to, and this is one reason why anything a person purchases that he plans on eating on Pesach that is something that's been produced must have a very good hashgacha to verify, number one, this point. The second point is a person has to verify that there is no kidneys ingredients for Ashkenazim. We will go through this eventually, but the kidneys list here that I came up with based on I researched a list of allergens of corn, and I got like 150 ingredients. They're like trace ingredients placed into foods. Corn derivatives, that's just corn. That's one of the many types of kidneys. Just one has already like 200 trace ingredients that are placed all over food. I'll just mention a few of them. Acetic acid, alcohol, alpha, I can't even say that word, artificial flavorings, artificial sweeteners, ascorbic acid, aspartame, that they put that in diet soda, baking powder, bleach flour, blended sugar. There's so many things. I'm not going to read the whole list. I'm not going to bore you.
But these are chametz?
No. Well, some of those actually may also be chametz, but a lot of these like preservatives and these type of trace ingredients, they are usually from corn or from chametz. They usually go after corn. Corn is, I think, the biggest producer.
I think soy is bigger.
Soy, that's another kitnius product for us. But now a person may say, okay, well, it's a trace ingredient. It's batel b'shishim. It's nullified in 60 times. What do you have to worry about? The answer is that is not correct. The rule of nullified in 60 times only applies if an ingredient fell in. So if a chametz flavoring accidentally, the worker in the factory tripped and it fell into the batch and said, you know what, let's just sell it anyways, then okay, it can be batel b'shishim. But if they're putting it in intentionally, which is the cases here in the discussion, then it's not batel even in 1,000, and it is chametz and may not be eaten on Pesach. So this is something that, even though many of us, we don't even buy anything for Pesach that's been produced, but a lot of people are not aware of this. People have to know. It's not like the regular year. You have to be very, very careful regarding that it should have a very reliable hashgacha. A third point. The third point is that the food has to be prepared under supervision for the sake of Pesach. If the food was not prepared under supervision for the sake of Pesach, we suspect maybe chametz fell inside. So even if a person cooked eggs, hard-boiled eggs, 2 days before Pesach, in a chametz pot, and they now ask, can I use these eggs? Can I eat these eggs on Pesach? They're just eggs. There's no chametz in the water. The pot is a chametz pot, but let's say it wasn't ben yemei. The answer is no, because if they were not picked at the time that they cooked it, but the pot was not ben yemei, meaning it didn't make sure. In other words, they didn't cook it with intent to eat the eggs on Pesach, then they are not allowed to eat it. And the same thing we also extend to foods that have been opened already and eaten during chametz meals. Even if they are kosher for Pesach foods, we don't eat them during Pesach because they were once used with a chametz meal, and perhaps unknowingly some of it got into the food. So this is the reason why that a lot, as we said, that making a proper hashgacha for Pesach is very difficult on a lot of foods, and that's why the Mahadran hashgachas have very few products under their hashgachas, because it's very difficult to determine all of these factors that we mentioned. This is also one of the reasons why many Yidden, not just Chabad Chassidim, but including Chabad Chassidim, are particular not to purchase processed foods, because all the conditions that we mentioned are so difficult to verify when you're dealing with mass production. I'll just give you an example. No matter how good the hashgacha is, no matter how good it is, any factory that's doing mass production is having workers that are not exactly Pesach conscious or chametz conscious dealing with the foods. And there is no guarantee that they will not simply, after eating their sandwich, which may not even be kosher, but at least has bread, that they will go without washing hands and then deal with production. I have seen that happen with my own very eyes, even though technically they have to wash hands. It doesn't help that it's written in the protocol if it's not followed. And practically, in my experience, it is not followed. So, since chametz on Pesach is very severe, these are some of the reasons why people avoid all processed foods due to these suspicions. We're going to get the kidneys.
Oh, okay. So the best for Pesach is to eat the minimum amount of matzot and then potatoes.
Minimum amount of matzot?
Matzot on the seder, the minimum amount.
Right.
So we don't take the risk of getting everything. And then you eat potatoes.
We discussed 2 weeks ago. We discussed that point. You don't have to be that machmir, but so you got to let go on something. Otherwise, you can't live in this world. Someone who's too superstitious, too paranoid, you can't live in this world. So you go back to the Gan Eden where you don't have klippus and you don't have worries. In this world, you got to live with the worries. No, we want to stay down here. Against our will do we live. We're going to skip the subject of taruvas, mixtures. It's not, if a food is not really so relevant, Baruch Hashem, no one here is cooking food in their chametz pots. People aren't having questions, some chametz fell inside. I have never heard of anyone who received a shayla on Pesach of some chametz fell inside my food, can I eat it? It just doesn't happen today. Back then it was common. People got these shaylas, but I think they've become obsolete because Klal Yisrael are just so careful, they don't even want to hear what the rabbi has to say. They will not eat the food. And, okay, let's go to, I will mention one halacha which has to do with vessels, foods that are not, have no chance of chametz, that have touched chametz vessels, may they be eaten. For example, I purchased meat, kosher meat, or any kosher food product that is not produced, and I don't know what knife it was cut with. Maybe it was cut with a chametz knife, maybe it was cut with a non-chametz knife. I have no idea. It was cut. It was cut. It didn't come whole. So do I have to suspect? So anything that's not a davar charif, meaning, for example, not horseradish, anything that's not a sharp food, even if it was cut with a chametz knife, the following is the halacha. If a kol nam charif kosher for Pesach food was cut with a clean chametz knife, the food remains permitted. So you don't have to get rid of the food. It's not like what we said before. If you cooked eggs in a chametz pot, you can't do it because maybe chametz fell in the pot while it was cooking and the chametz got cooked with the eggs, etc. So because of this, we're machmir. But here, what's the suspicion? If the chametz knife was used, just wash it. Wash the food. You cut a piece of meat, wash the meat. You want to make your conscience happy? Slice the piece off. Slice the area that touched the knife. That's just for the conscience. Halacha, you don't need to do that. But for the Jewish conscience, sometimes it's worth it. That's another option. Even if the knife was not clean, or you're not sure, it still suffices to simply wash it off. It is not possible for chametz to send its taste into a food if there was no heat involved.
If there was no
heat. The only exception to this is with a food that is charif, such as onion, garlic, and of course horseradish, which we all buy for Pesach. So with onion, it's not really such a problem. We usually buy whole onions; they're not cut. Garlic, same idea. But with horseradish, a lot of times you're not buying the entire root, and for that you have to make sure that a Pesach knife was used, not a non-chametz knife. And you should never buy horseradish for Pesach unless it has either A, hashgacha, that this was supervised, or B, it's the entire root. They just plucked it out of the ground.
But then you don't have the leaves. The leaves don't matter?
The leaves?
Yes, horseradish has leaves growing up above it.
Why do you need the leaves? Off. Right, why do you need, like a carrot, why do you need the leaves?
You don't need the leaves.
No, we don't care about that. The leaves don't make a difference. It's the root from the root
itself.
That's
the root itself.
Complete. The root has to be complete.
The root, yes.
If it's been trimmed, it's not good.
If you don't know. Because we don't know what they use. Maybe the guy, while he's working over there cutting the horseradish, he took a bite, he cut his sandwich in half, then cut his horseradish, boom.
But if you cut the end of it,
it won't help because we're machmir, like the Ramah, that the davar charif absorbs kulei entirely, not just kedei netila. Especially on Pesach. Is a general rule on Pesach. Every opinion that there possibly is in the laws of Taruvas that prohibits something, we take into account on Pesach. Even if this opinion is completely negated the rest of the year, we don't ever pay attention to them on Pesach. With some exception, we usually accept. So certainly an opinion like this, which even during the year we take into account, obviously on Pesach, we certainly would be stringent. I'll just give an example brought down. If a food absorbed, if I poured water into a cup, and let's say the cup had soup mix, which many times contains chametz in its soup mixes, and I poured the soup mix, which is iri klisheni, onto my Pesach pot. What's the din of my Pesach pot? So normally during the year, if that happened, we say you can remain kosher. Iri klisheni can't cook and may not be able to absorb it. But by Pesach or machmir, even if you poured it from a 10th pot. In fact, you even have opinions that say cold absorbs on Pesach. Yes, believe it or not. We don't rule this way. This, as I said, there are exceptions. This is an exception. But some place can say if, let's say, beer, I'm just giving an example, but any chametz be the case. Let's say beer fell into my Pesach pot on Pesach. They say you can't use your pot anymore. It fell in for a second. You just wash it off. No. Pot is treif. There is such an opinion. Based on the Chabad approach that in many Chassidim, that if the brachs happens to your pot, you don't use it the rest of Pesach, then certainly, of course, this would be the case. But again, this is a chumrah that we would keep.
So we don't keep the gebrachs example either. Then you were saying how much more.
Many people are machmer, sure. If gebrachs hits a vessel during Pesach, you don't use the vessel the rest of Pesach.
But is that the machmer opinion, not the right way to go?
I said all that is a chumrah. The whole idea of gebrachs is a chumrah.
Right.
But from letter of the law, we don't suspect for the idea of cold being able to absorb on Pesach from letter of the law. But with other things we do, as I said, klisheni, klishlish, etc. Okay, inedible foods. Shampoo, soap, perfume, deodorant, facial creams, oil, and cosmetics, and anything of the like. So the general law is as follows, that in all the laws of kashrut, we have to remember that in Pesach we have two prohibitions that we have to juggle here, that we have to figure out, and not always will the rules be the same for each one. We have an eating prohibition, and we have an owning prohibition. So whenever we discuss a question, is this chametz, is this chametz in terms of the prohibition of owning? And in addition, is this chametz in terms of the prohibition of eating, or vice versa? So the laws, sometimes we have the discrepancies between the two. So the law by inedible foods is as follows. In general, in kashrus, it's only not kosher if it's food. Something that's not food cannot be not kosher, because it's not food. Kashrus only applies to food products. There's no such thing as a non-kosher piece of wood. Unless someone bowed down to it, that's a different story, a great desire. But in general, something that's not food is not considered, does not have a kashrus issue. That's why when we get to medicine, we'll discuss this more. This is already, can be used as an introduction. Back in the day, maybe even today, we don't know about this, the secrets that the pharmaceutical companies do to their pills. But back in the day, lots of non-kosher foods were part of the ingredients of medicine. But often the non-kosher food was completely destroyed to the point of inedibility before it was mixed in, such as a famous remedy back then. It's even written, the ingredients of this remedy is written in the Shulchan Aruch in Yeridea, was to use the ash of fried shrotzen, of certain fried creeper crawlers, we'll call them. Bugs.
Bugs?
Insects.
Ouch.
Well, it would be ouch if you didn't take it. They took it so they wouldn't feel ouch anymore. It was mixed with some other things. It wasn't just, chugging bug ash, but it was part of an ingredient. And it's not a kashrus issue. The reason is because once it's not a food, it doesn't have a kashrus. That's only biblically. Biblically, once it's not a food, it's ash. It doesn't have, it's just an example, or it's spoiled. It doesn't have a kashrus issue. But rabbinically, it does. In the Rabbanon, there is always a prohibition to eat anything that is not kosher, even if it is no longer edible. And that is because the Chachamim made a decree the term of the decree is called achshave. Achshave means to consider or to give worth. It's true that ash of a bug is not food. Probably even the Chinese won't eat that. I mean, they eat bugs, but I don't think they eat the ash of the bugs, right? It's not food. Nonetheless, when you put that in your mouth and you desire to eat it, you are saying it is food. So while from a biblical perspective it's not food, from a rabbinical perspective it is food. Using all that, now let's go to chametz. Chametz follows the same line of thought, but makes a big swerve on one issue. That is as follows. The rule by all of the kashrus, all of their non-kosher foods is, so long as it's no longer edible for humans, its non-kosher status is obsolete, is lost. And it's only rabbinical that you're not allowed to eat it. However, by chametz, we require it to be inedible even for dogs. If it's edible for dogs, it still retains its biblical food status and maintains a biblical owning and eating prohibition. Now, why do we care about the animals suddenly when it comes to Pesach? Why are the animals the definition of what's going to make my food be considered chametz or not? So the reason brought down, not why dogs specifically, maybe because just dogs eat everything. So if the dog, at least what's brought in halacha, dogs they don't have a lot of food to eat, and therefore they are, So if it's good, if even a dog won't eat it, you're safe. It's like they say, if a yeshiva baruch won't eat it, you really know it's not good. So this is a joke. If the dog won't eat it, so you really know it's off. But they do explain why we then extend this to the animal kingdom, and that is as follows: because on Pesach, the issue with it isn't just that you have edible food. The issue with the Isser of chametz is that you have food that can leaven another food, that can make it rise, yeast. It can be used as a leavening agent. So since chametz, until it reaches a state of inedibility to a dog, can still be used as a leavening agent, even though it's not edible for humans, therefore maintains its biblical prohibition. Bottom line, what comes out of this is as follows. Chametz, that is inedible even to a dog, is permitted in ownership, but forbidden to be eaten on Pesach. Okay?
Say it one more time.
Permitted, any chametz that is inedible even for a dog, is permitted in ownership. You're allowed to own it. It's not chametz anymore. Even rabbinically, it's not chametz. But you're not allowed to eat it, because the second you go to eat it, we coin this achshave. We use the term achshave. You are now considering it food.
Even if the dog doesn't want it,
correct?
You're doing
because
right.
now you're the dog. You want to be the dog. You want to eat it.
Got it.
You're considering it food.
It's the same as kitniot. We can have it, but we can't eat it.
In that term, yes.
If it is a medicine.
So
we'll get to medicine soon.
Does that also include pet food?
Pet food. Well, if pet food is edible for pets, then I'm assuming it is, right?
Yeah.
Then of course it's chametz. Of course it's a problem. Since it's edible for a dog. So 100%. People that own pets or farm animals or any animal, and they want to feed them chametz on Pesach, absolutely not. The only way they can do it is if they sell the pets to the guy.
Really?
Sell the pets to the guy, including the mechiras chametz, include my animals as well, and arrange with a guy to come around, and the guy will come and feed the guy's pets chametz. Not my pets. They're not my pets anymore. They will feed the guy's pets chametz.
Even if you feed the pet yourself?
What's that?
You sell it to the guy,
Right.
but you can't.
I cannot touch chametz.
But you feed him.
I cannot feed them chametz. I cannot
so
touch
you have
chametz.
to get rid
The
of it.
guy has to be the one who's
In
going to
charge.
come in.
He's in charge.
Well, we sold it. Let's say I included in the sale the pets, the pet food, everything. But who's now going to deliver that food?
Yeah.
I cannot do it. It has to be a Jew. It has to be a guy. A guy has to be the one doing it. A Jew cannot feed chametz to animals. You're not allowed to touch chametz on Pesach. Okay.
So the dog has to reject it to meet the first standard of ownership. The dog has to reject it
If a dog
to
rejects
own
it,
to own
biblically it's not chametz anymore. So, not regarding eating, not regarding owning. Where did the Chachamim place their restriction? Only regarding eating. Regarding owning, they said, we're living in the way it is, you're allowed to own it. But regarding eating, they said, the second you come to eat it, we're going to consider it food, because you're coming to eat it, and you're not allowed to eat. And any chametz that's food is not kosher. So, therefore, you can't eat it. But the one nuance, the one condition on this is that you're eating it intentionally. If it's not like real chametz where, if it falls into food, you need to have 60 times, and if it's on Pesach, 60 times doesn't help. It's not nullified even in 1,000. By this, it's not real chametz. It's just chametz when you come to eat it, because now you're considering it food. But if I'm not coming to eat it, and it's just being eaten as a steak, then we don't apply that rule, and it's permitted even rabbinically. Keep this in mind. This will help us a lot regarding a lot of what we're going to learn right now regarding products and medicine, vitamins, etc., and all those things. Okay, so we discussed owning, we discussed eating. What about benefiting? Can you benefit, right? We know one of the, included in the eating prohibition on Pesach is also that a person may not benefit from chametz on Pesach. Meaning he can't sell it, he can't feed it to an animal, he can't use it on his body, he cannot have any benefit from chametz. So the question is, we said before you're not allowed to eat chametz, maybe also you're not allowed to benefit from chametz, rabbinically. The answer is no, you are. Only regarding eating, the Chachamim make this decree, we apply achshava, you're considering it food. But by benefit, it doesn't apply. So anything that's not edible for a dog, and I'll add, which I did not add before, and this happened before the 6th hour in Erev Pesach, all the inedibility has to happen before the 6th hour of Erev Pesach for all this to apply. If it happens afterwards, it doesn't help anymore. because then it has to already be destroyed. We have the mitzvah of tashbisu. Assuming this happened before the 6th hour on Erev Pesach, you can sell it. So you can sell and you can own any product that is inedible, even for dogs, that contains chametz in it. You can buy, you can own, and you can sell.
Until Pesach.
No, even on Pesach. Until Pesach, you can even do them with chametz.
So you may.
What do you mean by until Pesach?
Didn't you just say?
If it was not right, I said that. No, what I said was like this: in order for this heter, this allowance to apply, the food has to reach inedibility to a dog before the 6th hour of Erev Pesach. Mm-hmm. If it reached that only afterwards, like for example, I burnt a piece of bread I found at 12:30 on Erev Pesach, which is after the time of owning. And I burnt it to the point that it's no longer edible even for dogs, but it's not ash. I still have to go burn it more. It's still chametz, because when Pesach entered, meaning when the prohibition of owning entered, this was fresh chametz. Yeah. So if it's fresh chametz, it no longer helps to say, okay, I'll simply make it inedible to a dog. Another example, pouring bleach. Before Pesach starts, if you can't reach your chametz for whatever reason, you don't have to take anything apart to get to it. Simply pour bleach on it. And that fulfills even the mahadrin min mahadrin minhag Yisrael. But on Pesach itself, pouring bleach doesn't do a thing. Because killing the chametz on Pesach doesn't kill your obligation or prohibition.
Because of the owning issue more than
it was, in other words, correct. Once it was settled that you own chametz on Pesach, you now have a mitzvah to destroy it from the world.
What about the biur chametz? You've done.
Yeah.
So
even
if you have some chametz left, it's no more yours. You made a biur.
Beer, well, you did beer to what you did. What you didn't do, you didn't do. If I burnt a loaf of bread and I left another loaf at home, and I didn't do mechiras chametz, I have to take that second loaf and burn it. Doesn't matter what time.
But what about the formulas that you say dikat chametz, and then you say
bittul? You're talking about bittul. Even so,
bittul.
bittul only works there, not the rabbanan. Even a person did bittul, even a person nullified his chametz, rabbinically he's still obligated to go and destroy it.
It was always very confusing. Very good to clarify this. That was always confusing to me. What about, to go back to the original sort of case and concept here and apply it to, you may do something about cosmetics, but let's
we're going to talk, yeah. This is what's
but apply to what you already said, though. You got lipstick with chametz in it.
Coming up.
Okay. If somebody ate it, even though a dog wouldn't eat it.
Very good.
Okay.
We'll discuss this. Clarification on bittul, chira. This is its own subject. We did this last year, if anybody remembers. We'll just do a quick recap on that. And that is, there's a number of things that we do before Pesach to get rid of the owning prohibition. Some of these are biblically required, some of them are only rabbinically required, and some of them are not required at all. Biblically, a person has a choice. Either get rid of all the chametz from your home and property. I don't care what you do with it. Burn it, throw it away, throw it in the street. Just get rid of it before the 6th hour arrives. That's one option. Or another option is simply disown it before Pesach and leave it in your house. Just disown it. You can leave it. That's biblical.
Sell it, you mean, or disown it?
No, I said disown.
Yeah, you didn't say sell. Oh,
disown. There's 3 levels: disowning, destroying, selling, and nullifying. Okay, we're the 4. Let's go through them. Okay, so we said that biblically you have an option. Either you can throw it all out, do bedikas chametz, search your home, throw it all out, or right before the 6th hour of Pesach begins, say, God, chametz to me is like the dust of the earth, completely worthless. I am disowning all the chametz I own.
Which we do.
And comes out a heavenly voice and says, you mean even the shivas? No, not the shivas. And that's, of course, why the chachamim made the decree, because they knew if God would ask them even the shivas, they would probably say, maybe let me have a shot or two, then I'll decide. So because that's one of the reasons the chachamim put a stop to that ability, and they said disowning no longer helps rabbinically, it still helps biblically. So biblically, if you've disowned your chametz, if you said kol chamira v'chamira d'ikar b'shusi, as I said, on the night of b'dikas chametz, after it's concluded, and on the day of bir chametz, before the 6th hour, you have officially biblically disowned on chametz. It's no longer possible for you to biblically transgress on chametz unless you buy chametz on Pesach, or someone gives you chametz on Pesach. Such as you saw a box of matzahs on the street, and you're like, wow, free matzahs. You picked it up and it's full of pretzels. Now you own chametz, and now you have to destroy that chametz biblically right away. So don't pick things up. You don't know what it is. So by picking it up, you acquire it. the next level is that, so that created the mitzvah b'dikas chametz. Since we can't disown, so therefore we're only left with the first option, go through your whole house and get rid of all the chametz you have. Then we have a second idea, which is mechiras chametz. Mechiras chametz, you don't have to do if you're not leaving chametz at home. You don't have to do it. There's no obligation. It's only meant for people leaving chametz at home. Nonetheless, today's generation, the Jewish people are machmir, and we all do mechiras chametz just in case as a backup. So the bittul removes the biblical obligation, the cleaning removes the rabbinical obligation, and the mechira is the extra hitter.
And what does that address?
If you're not leaving chametz at home, the mechira is the extra hitter. If you are leaving chametz at home, the mechira is absolutely obligated min adin. It's biblically required if you're leaving chametz at home.
The selling has to be done, not just the nullifying.
Absolutely.
Nullifying alone doesn't do it.
Nullifying doesn't help for what you're planning to sell. How on earth are you going to explain to this Gentile that I'm selling you what I disown?
You want to keep it for us.
That's
You want
fine.
to have it back after Pesach. Since you want to have it
Yeah,
back
you want
after
it back.
Pesach,
It's
so
not
you don't
nullified.
nullify, you can.
It's
But
not
you'd be covered,
nullified.
like you said, you'd be covered if
It's
you
not
just got
nullified.
rid of it.
So anyone who leaves chametz at home, obviously their only option left is to sell the chametz.
That part.
And that's what we do. Okay, so does that clarify all those ideas? Okay. Going back to our subject, let's now use all this information and begin going through inedible products. So it's already answered all these things that we mentioned: shampoo, soap, deodorant, facial cream, oils, cosmetics, gasoline, shoe polish, etc., etc. All these things that are not foods, they may be owned. Now, you may ask, who says it's not edible for a dog? How could you just go out and say all of these inedible food, all these products that are not foods are mutter, when you yourself stated before it has to be inedible for a dog? Did you stand all these products to the dog test? Did you place all the types of shampoo and soaps and facial creams and oils in front of your dog? What right do we have to make such statements? So the answer is, because in truth, the rule that we said before, that the chametz must be inedible for a dog before the 6th hour, for it to be allowed to be owned, only applies to pure chametz, like a piece of bread, a cracker, pasta, etc. But if the chametz is an ingredient within a product, and the product is not edible, it's not human food, even if a human would eat it in a time of need, it's mutter to own it. It's as if the chametz is destroyed, and it's mutter to own, and it has the same laws as chametz that is not edible for a dog. So since we can all agree shampoo and all these things are not normal human foods, therefore, even if they have a chametz ingredient, they are permitted to be owned, and they're permitted to be benefited from, and they simply may not be eaten on Pesach.
What about used?
What about used?
You put the lipstick on if it has it.
To use it, yes. To use it, so we'll discuss that right now. So the major question now comes up is that what about using it? What about using it? What about using the
Or
product?
eating it.
Well, we said about eating it.
Yeah.
We said you can't eat it.
Well, you can eat it.
No,
You
there
can't
you
eat
go.
it.
No,
You can't eat it. You can't eat it. If you want to
Said
eat
you
that
can't
lipstick
eat
and you're just so disgusting.
So
you
what
like your
about
lipstick.
using it? So
Okay.
with using, we have the letter of the law, and we have the chumrah. The letter of the law is that there's a famous dispute regarding if we say sicha kashtir, which means when a person rubs a product on his body, a food product on his body, do we say that's considered as if he drank it? Why? Because just like when you eat something, it gets absorbed. When you rub something, it also gets absorbed. So maybe it's like drinking. Really, the question is IV considered eating or not? That's really the question. And it's the majority of poskim rule that it's not. And therefore, being that we said it's mutter to benefit from these products on Pesach, you would be allowed to place it on your hand because at most it's considered benefit, and benefit is mutter. And we don't rule that smearing is considered like eating. But nonetheless, since there are poskim who do rule this way, there are poskim who do rule. Now, Alter Rebbe is not one of them, but there are poskim who do rule this way. Shach and Nekudas HaKesef. Therefore, there is room to be stringent and not to apply these things to the body. You don't have to, and especially in a case where it's only a suffix of chametz, you don't even know for sure it has chametz. Let's say we're talking about if you bought shampoo the shampoo is called shampoo shibolat shul, oatmeal shampoo, and you look in the ingredients and it actually has oatmeal inside. You know, sometimes they say names and it doesn't have any of it inside, but this actually has oatmeal inside. And they do have such shampoos. So that's a chumrah not to use. It's a chumrah not to use on Pesach.
But you can own it.
Own it's never a problem,
It's an ingredient.
unless the oatmeal is like pieces of oats, like in cereal and milk, and you have the oat pieces. But if it's just blended in, not oat pieces, then yes, it would be permitted to be owned, but a chumrah not to use. But when we're discussing other shampoos and all these other products, then perhaps a person doesn't even need to be machmer according to the machmer opinion, because it's only a suffix, especially being that some poskim rule that if it's inedible for a dog, everyone agrees there's no prohibition of smearing. So we're ruling with the Halachot. So if any of these products were proven to be inedible for dogs, there wouldn't even be a chumrah involved. Nonetheless, it's quite simple for anyone who wants to be machmer to check the ingredients. I know Rabbi Blumenkrantz will come out with a list every single year. In truth, you can do this yourself. All you have to do is look at the ingredients in the bottle and see if it lists ethyl alcohol in the ingredients or it says fragrance, and if it usually does, chances are it is chametz, and then if you decide to be machmir, so you won't use that on Pesach. But if it doesn't have fragrance or any ethyl alcohol byproduct listed in the ingredients, then it is not a problem and you can go ahead and use it. You don't have to have a hashkacha. You just did what they would do. The same thing the hashkacha would do, you did yourself. Now you say, what about trace ingredients? This whole thing is a chumrah. You don't have to be machmer here with regarding to a trace ingredient that's less than 2%.
So in that situation, you don't have to, you can keep it around, but you can't use it. You don't have to sell it.
None of these things have to be sold. We already said before. They are not edible for humans, and therefore they do not have to be sold at all.
Or dogs.
I said it doesn't even have to reach that state. Even if it's edible for humans, it's enough in this case, because it's a huvas, it's a mixture. But to use it, as I said, it's a chumrah not to use it. Those who want to be machmer can be machmer. Those who don't want to be machmer don't have to be machmer. As we said before, even though we're machmer all the chumras on Pesach, it's not clear that this is one of those chumras for all the reasons we mentioned. That it's not clear that even the machmer opinion would be machmer in this situation.
How about tobacco products?
Oh, we're going to go through a lot of detailed products. So I'm just getting so far the rules, getting to it. But whenever you have something that is used for medicinal purposes,
Like tobacco.
Like medicinal creams, and many of them may have ethyl alcohol in their ingredients, which usually ethyl alcohol can be made from different products. Some make it from corn. That's how it's made in the U.S. They don't make it from grains, but in Europe they do make it from grains as well, and so that's what we'll discuss soon about perfumes and colognes. But if it ever says alcohol or ethyl alcohol or fragrance, then usually that's a sign that it may be chametz. For medicinal purposes, a medicinal cream, everyone agrees there's no concept of sicha kishtia. There's no concept of smearing is like eating. It's not. The concept is only rabbinical, even according to the stringent opinion, and that rabbinical concept was not extended to medicine. So the children of Moshe, therefore, all medicinal creams, even for the most machmir, may be used even if they say that they have grain chametz in them. Again, assuming that the grain chametz has dissolved, it's not piecey, not pieces of oats. Placing it on the lips. Can you place these products on the lips? Someone who wants to follow the letter of the law, which permits using all these products, can you place them on your lips and mouth? And the answer is based on what we learned, minadin, yes. Because since you're not intending to eat it, and we said before that Isser is only, avashra is only if you intend to consume it. Since you're not intending, it is mutter from the letter of the law. But nonetheless, regarding Pesach, the custom, many are accustomed to be meticulous, to be careful, and if we're careful not to place it on our hands, and certainly we're careful not to place it on our lips, where we can eat it, even though from the letter of the law, this is all allowed.
The rabbis didn't say anything about the lips then? Then it's okay?
As I said, it's completely mutter. We have a case example brought in Trumas Hadeshin, recorded in the Ramon the Alter Rebbe, regarding using chametz dye. Back in the day, the dyes were made with flour, chametz flour. So when you would take your quill and write something, then you were dipping it into chametz that has some inedible products added to it, not fit for a dog. And the question that came up, are you allowed to write with this on Pesach? Because many people, especially back then with the quills, would, instinctively take it and do a little lick. And you may come to swallow chametz on Pesach. And the poskim rule, this is not a problem. You have an identity crisis mistake. This is not chametz. This is an item that used to be chametz. This isn't chametz anymore. Just because once upon a time it used to be beautiful flour that was chametz doesn't mean it still is. So if the ink was created before Pesach, you have no problem. Even if you accidentally come to do so, it's still not an issue. And therefore the Pesachim rule, including one of the major Pesachim, the Charedis, Moshe Bransdorfer, Meir Bransdorfer, which is funny. The Eida Charedis, they're very machmir in many things, but anything that their Pesachim were lenient in, they write down to be lenient. It's just funny because when you read through their Radha,
additional opinion?
no, they put out every single year a manual, a kashrus manual, and there's always a very good top of the line mahadrin, very strict. But whenever it comes to something that their Pesachim were stringent, were lenient in, that's the policy. I'm not saying it's the policy of the hashgacha. That's what at least they write in the kashrus manual. So, for example, regarding mouthwash and toothpaste, they write that doesn't need hashgacha for Pesach. You can use it. Why? Because their Pesach, Meir Bransdorfer, ruled as I explained, and nobody really argues in this. I mean, he is correct in what he said. That min hadin, it is permitted because you don't have, even if you do swallow, you don't have intent to swallow. It is not food. Now, even though someone recently wrote, well, it comes from toothpaste is edible, technically, has all edible ingredients. We don't care about that. What we care about, is this a food that humans would eat? The answer is no. We already established that before. If it's not food for majority of people, it's not considered a food. It doesn't have to be inedible for a dog. We don't care if the dog likes the toothpaste or not. If it was pure chametz, then yes, but this is not pure chametz. So therefore, min hadin, it is permitted. But once again, for a chumrah, there's many things min hadin that are permitted. But by Pesach, we're very, very machmir, and we go above and beyond the letter of the law. So therefore, definitely regarding lip products and mouth products, especially that it's so available. It's not like someone's calling, listen, there's no toothpaste available, this is all I have. Am I not going to brush my teeth the whole week? It's okay. You want to follow the letter of the law, follow the letter of the law. But in a case where it's available, Baruch Hashem, so of course everybody should try to purchase toothpaste and mouthwash and all these things with a hashgacha. Lipstick is inedible for dogs. It contains Vaseline, which is petroleum. It contains petroleum. All petroleum is deadly for dogs. So it's
you said we won't use, even if it has hashgacha, mouthwash?
Mouthwash. What's wrong with mouthwash if it has hashgacha? Even if it doesn't have hashgacha, it's mutter. Even if you know for sure it has chametz, it's mutter.
According to lenient opinion of Bransdorfer.
No. He says you don't need a hashgacha. I didn't say the hashgacha is according to lenient opinion. He says it doesn't need a hashgacha. Those that give a hashgacha, usually what they're supposed to be doing if they are not fooling the public, which does happen many times. Let's not fool ourselves. They do fool us plenty. Okay, you already know my opinions on the subject. But if they are really doing their job, that means that they are making sure that there are no chametz ingredients added to the mouthwash or toothpaste in order so we can fulfill our chumrah. But if they're giving a hashgacha based on this heter, I don't need their hashgacha. I can just take any toothpaste myself. I don't need their hashgacha for that. To just say, even though it has chametz in it, you're allowed to take it because, we know that. Thank you. We don't need the hashgacha.
How do we know the difference?
That's a good question. That's a big problem. When they don't publicize what their policies are, we have a big problem. I agree with that, and it's true. But listen, it's better to have with hashgacha, more of a chance that it doesn't have chametz than to have it without, even though, as we said, so now we're going to go through a list of many, many different products and go through them, one by one. Rubbing alcohol, if it is made from grain. When I say grain, I mean 1 to 5 grains. It is a problem. That is not inedible. It's like saying dough is inedible. Yeah, dough is inedible, but it's a product that can be used with food. Chametz, rubbing alcohol is no good. It has to be sold.
Rubbing alcohol is usually isopropyl, not ethanol.
If it is ethanol.
What about methyl? There are different kinds of alcohol.
If it is ethanol.
Right. Methyl is not a problem.
If it is ethanol.
Methyl is no problem. If it's pure methyl.
If the rubbing alcohol is, as my bottle says, 97% ethyl alcohol, it is a problem. It has to be sold unless you figure out, unless you call them up, they say, oh yeah, we use corn. Okay, so it's getting.
Why? Because it's not food. It's not edible by a dog. Not a dog.
Rubbing alcohol, it's pure alcohol. It's nothing else. It's not who says it's not edible to a dog?
Rubbing alcohol is usually isopropyl alcohol, not ethanol.
Rubbing alcohol, you eat?
If it's
I
used
don't know, beer.
externally and you're not eating it.
It doesn't matter if it's pure chametz. We already said it has to be inedible for a dog. What makes this inedible for a dog? It's just like any alcohol.
But it could be poison.
Bottom line, this was the psak of Moshe, and this is what should be followed.
Or not to eat it.
Not to own it. Rubbing alcohol that has a chametz suspicion, as I said, ethyl alcohol derivative should be gotten rid of, sold with the guy. Cosmetics, shoe polish, all these things, as we mentioned already, you can own them. We discussed about using them. Deodorant, facial creams, oils, and cosmetics, as we said, minadin, you're allowed to use them. It's a stringency not to. Regarding perfumes and colognes. So, the Divrei Malkiel, who was a Pesach in Lita about 100-something years ago, he wrote a contract, and in his contract he actually includes the sale of perfume. He writes, perfume is sold to the guy as well. And based on that, many of the contracts, in fact, the standard contracts used today by all Rabbanim, state that we're selling all products that contain chametz, including shampoo and soap and all these things. And I tried many years to figure out who wrote this, because as we already established, this is not necessary. You don't have to sell. You can even use it, especially you don't have to sell it. And literally everyone I spoke to sent me to somebody else. All the Rabbanim, including Rabbanim who write contracts, because their contract is based on previous contracts they received. It wasn't written in the Alter Rebbe's contract. Some of it is written in the Rebbe Rasham's contract, but I haven't been able to uncover why this is written, because there's no need for it. And I have mentioned to a number of Rabbanim, this creates a big problem, because if you're selling these products, and I want to use it, then you're making me steal. But the truth is, you're not really stealing because the guy gives you permission. But if after Pesach it's in the contract. But if after Pesach he decides to go through with the sale, then he will say, by the way, prices of shampoo just went up like 5,000%. You used 2 scoops of shampoo. I had to pay you for it, 30 cents. Now you have to pay me $30 because you have to pay me back for my shampoo. So they enter us into this problem. And you can't say, well, I didn't know, I didn't agree. You signed on a power of attorney. When you sign a power of attorney, you're giving him the rights to do all those decisions for you. You can't later say in court, oh, I didn't agree, I didn't know. Then you shouldn't have signed. You should have looked at what you were signing at.
The rabbi being the attorney in this case.
100%. The rabbi is the attorney. He is your power of attorney to make the conditions of sale with the Gentile. And many people don't know those conditions of sale, but they are still legally and halachically binding because you signed on the contract. So that's something that maybe one day I'll be able to uncover, but so far I have not. But anyways, getting back to our point, regarding perfume and colognes, so he writes perfumes, many people use perfumes and colognes on Pesach, and it's completely forbidden because I found out that it's made from ethyl alcohol, which is made, at least back then, it was made from wheat, produced from wheat. In Europe, even today they produce it from wheat, not all of it, but some of it is still produced from wheat. And because of this, he writes it's complete chametz. It has to be sold to the guy. You're not allowed to benefit from it on Pesach. When you smell it, you're benefiting from chametz on Pesach. And he says it's isum and and he's very strict with it.
Who is that that writes that?
The Divrei Malkiel. Nonetheless, while what he was referring to may be correct, in today's day and age, with today's production of perfumes and colognes, they are definitely no worse in terms of edibility than the shampoos and conditioners and soaps, and therefore they would be in that same status, which would mean that minadin, mutter to own, even if it has ethyl alcohol inside, it's very written. That's made from chametz ingredients. It would still be permitted to own, and even to use minadin as mutter. But nonetheless, this is something that many people are machmir with, as we already mentioned before. Sicha kashtia, definitely in this case where we have some poskim who called this out specifically, so it's many are machmir.
It's different than rubbing alcohol because it's not 100.
It's not 100%. It's not pure. Yeah. It's mixed with all these other ingredients. In my research that I did on this, basically the alcohol, the fragrance is anywhere between 95 to 20% of the perfume, depending how expensive it is, depending on the quality and the company. But anywhere between 20 to 95% of it will be fragrance, meaning anywhere between 95% to 80%. Sorry, anywhere between 5 to 80% will be ethyl alcohol. And the purpose of that alcohol is, and all perfumes have ethyl alcohol, and the purpose of that alcohol is to, it causes the fragrance to spread, and it basically, that's what disappears from your hand. It goes into the thin air.
We don't care that a dog would need it, or will a dog eat this?
Well, first of all, most likely a dog won't eat it, but even if you won't, it's not food. It's been mixed with inedible things. It's not
mixed with the factor that makes it different. Okay.
So how do you get out of this? If you want to continue using perfume and colognes over Pesach, simple.
My wife wants to.
Correct.
You said
so how do you get out of it?
Why do you have to get out of it? It's machmir to not use them. So what do we mean get out?
Right. So if you want to be machmir, how do you get out of it?
Okay.
So the way to get out of it is you can send an email to the company, ask them what is your ethyl alcohol based from. As I said, most ethyl alcohol today in production is from corn. It is not from wheat. There is, as I said, in the United States, all ethyl alcohol is made from corn, not wheat. And let's not forget, ethanol is a major gasoline proponent, and it's all made from corn today in the United States. But in Europe, which a lot of perfumes come from, they do make it also from wheat. So if you find out from the company that they use a corn base, and the way I do this, I ask them, not specifically in perfume, but any product, you don't have to start giving a whole lecture regarding kashrus, Jewish dietary laws. You just say, listen, I have an allergy to this and this and this. Do you have this product, and do you have this ingredient in your product? And usually the way it's answered, at least to me, is that we don't, but we can't tell you anything officially because we don't want to have liability. So
That's what they're right.
usually, yes.
But,
they want to play it safe. Legally.
What about derivatives from, isn't it still a problem for kidney oil?
No, we're not going to be mocking with kidneys regarding using a base.
Ethanol derived from kidney oil?
Not a problem
And you
whatsoever.
can't use benzene.
Sparta can use cologne happily.
Right.
Machmir, Sparta.
Correct. Okay, we went through creams, eardrops, eye drops, also not a problem. Owning, using, not a problem whatsoever.
What about baking soda? Baking soda is all.
Baking soda could come from chametz.
It comes from usually corn.
It could come from chametz as well.
Baking soda?
But it's edible. It's an edible.
No, that's
What do you want to
place
know?
of toothpaste.
Baking soda is not from corn. Baking soda is
Sodium
carbonate has nothing to do with any
Soda
food
bicarbonate, right.
Sodium bicarbonate is nothing from food. It's a mineral. It's from the ground.
It's a compound.
From the
It's a
ground?
compound. Yeah. Arm & Hammer baking soda is kosher for Pesach.
I thought it was derived from corn.
No.
Well, so that would be okay.
Arm &
Maybe
Hammer
baking
is
powder. Maybe I'm confused with
baking
baking
powder is making corn.
Baking powder.
Yeah, sodium carbonate.
So
One's baking soda versus
soda bicarbonate is okay.
because
Check your box.
You need a hashgacha.
Has to have hashgacha.
You need to have hashgacha. We don't know today what they're doing, what they're adding, as we said.
Baking soda, the Arm & Hammer is OUP.
Armin.
Arm & Hammer.
Okay, lipstick, chapstick, Vaseline, toothpaste, mouthwash. So as follows. Lipstick, as we already said, letter of law, not a problem. Dogs, as far as I know, don't put on lipstick. They don't eat lipstick. As I said, it contains petroleum, which is deadly for dogs or other animals, if eaten in large amounts, but it's still not edible. So minadin can be used, but the best thing is to get with when we say hashgacha, you can try to find what hashgacha they do have, or look at the ingredients. Just look at the ingredients. Look at what it says. If it doesn't say fragrance, if it doesn't say ethyl alcohol, any of those code names, then you can use it. Chapstick is, letter of law is once again not a problem, especially if you have very chapped lips and then it's considered for medicinal reasons. And it's not
Vaseline.
Vaseline is the company Vaseline is 100% petroleum jelly. It's kosher for Pesach. There's nothing else in there. Toothpaste with mouthwash we already discussed. Dental floss, any unflavored dental floss is not a problem. If it's flavored dental floss, then what's the flavoring? A lot of times they use ethyl alcohol, once again, a fragrance carrier. So that has to be checked out.
But it has a
For the
wax
chumrah,
on it.
for the
It has a
chumrah.
wax on it, these flosses, don't they? I don't know.
Wax, we're not worried about wax, we're worried about flavoring. Because the flavoring is usually done with ethyl alcohol. Cigarettes and tobacco, a big problem. They have a lot of chametz ingredients that may be used, such as fragrances, once again, ethyl alcohol, made from chametz alcohol. Cigarette paper is coated with starch, which can come from chametz. Even though
You don't eat it. You don't eat it.
It doesn't matter, but you're smoking
You're
it.
wrong, you're
Maybe
wrong.
smoking is like eating. It's a
Oh, it's
discussion.
not
in
like
the Pesach.
it's not like rubbing on the
Well,
skin.
that's why some places can even hold you have to make a bracha before you smoke. No, back in the day, the halachic terminology for smoking was shtias tutin, drinking tobacco. Smoking was called drinking tobacco.
Not chewing tobacco.
No, I'm not about chewing tobacco. Taking about smoking a cigarette was called drinking. Shtias tutin. When you read it, like, what on earth are they
What are
talking
you talking
about?
about?
Because they're using this palm oil, those
Hookahs. The hookahs today.
Oh, the hookah.
How about
Okay, so cigarettes should be either.
snuff?
Oh, I'll get to snuff. So first of all, cigarettes are also the whole year.
It should be also because of.
It's a health issue. It's also the whole year. Tobacco also. All these things are. And nobody should be smoking them or using them anytime. But especially on Pesach, they have to be extra careful that they have a hashgacha.
They have cigarettes.
Are there cigarettes with hashgacha?
When I mean hashgacha, I mean that someone checked out the ingredients and listen, we verified that they use, unstarched paper or cornstarch paper, and that they don't use fragrances. They have to check it out. But it's a good time to quit. That's for sure. It's a good time to quit. And smoking cigarettes is 100% against halacha. And to say you need to smoke with a hashgacha is like, it just sounds weird.
Yeah.
You
like my bacon with hashgacha.
Smoking on Yom
I like a
Tov.
good bacon, but I need a hashgacha.
The heter to smoke on Yom Tov.
Right. Snuff tobacco is not a problem because even if it was rubbed with fragrance from ethyl alcohol, it's not considered benefit. You're just snuffing it. You're not considered to be. It's not considered eating. I'm sorry. It is considered benefit. You're allowed to benefit from it. It's not considered.
You can use snuff.
Different than smoking.
Yes,
Interesting.
you can use snuff.
Different than smoking.
It does not require hashgacha.
Drinking the snuff through your nose.
This was discussed already in the Pesachim of 100 years ago, the Marsham and many others. They also had snuff back then. They had snuff that was made with fragrances that had chametz derivatives, and they ruled that it is mutter. Okay, home products like, soap, dish soap, etc. So anything that doesn't come in contact with your food or plates that will be used with your food, 100% not a problem. You don't need a hashgacha on that thing. Those companies that sell bleach with a hashgacha, like they have bleach that's sold with hashgacha, Chasam Seifa, complete nonsense. Doesn't need it. It's ridiculous. You just want to.
That you use dish towels on your plates.
Wait, you
If
could
it's
put
washed in it, doesn't matter.
Bleach,
bleach dish
floor
towels.
bleach.
Bleach
I'm
dish
talking about
towels.
floor bleach. They have bottles of floor bleach.
But people use that in their laundry.
People use in their laundry.
Yeah.
Right. So what? What's the problem?
So he's saying
A
using the
towel that you use as a dish towel
Right.
on your dishes, not a problem.
Not at all.
Good.
But
Not
you
a
can't
problem
use your bleach
whatsoever.
on your dishes then.
I mean, then of course you can. It's not food.
Okay, but there is a problem. you
First
think
of all, there's no chashash of chametz in bleach. That's
with-
number one.
Okay, fine.
Number two, even if it were, okay, it's not a problem whatsoever.
Okay. So what's the remark you made about dishes then? You said something about as long as
So,
you're not using.
so I made a differentiation. Anything that will not be used with that will not come into contact with your food is 100% not a problem whatsoever. There's no even reason to be machmer.
What about dish?
But anything that will come into contact with your plates, minadin, it's still not a problem because once again we already said it's not edible for you. It's not human food. You're not intending to eat it. But then already, as I said before, things that are already touching the mouth, close to the mouth, and many are accustomed
Well,
to
there'd
be
be a
shredded.
residue on the plate, right?
Even if there is, I said minadin, we don't care about that. You don't have intention to eat it. You're not intending to eat the soap.
So any kind of soap, we don't have to have an hashgacha.
Minadin it doesn't. Minadin it doesn't, but it's available, so get with hashgacha, why not? It's available. Anything that can come into contact with your lips, it's a good thing to lechatchila be machmir and get with hashgacha. Not a
Baby
must, you don't
wipes.
have to.
Baby
Your lips.
Huh?
Baby wipes are getting on your lips.
No.
I don't know. Play-Doh, I think we already discussed this.
Play-Doh, you said.
Play-Doh with the D-A-O-H at the end is chametz, has to be sold to the guy.
You wouldn't eat it.
It's dough. You could eat it.
Huh?
It's dough.
Okay.
It's just regular dough.
Okay.
I wouldn't
What
eat
do they
dough.
call it?
I'm not allowed to own dough on Pesach.
Child might.
So if I took a piece of dough, challah dough, and I made it yellow, that means now I can own it.
I didn't think Play-Doh was that much like.
No, it is.
It is.
That's
It
exactly what it is.
is?
It's flour,
Flour.
water, and salt.
Really, I'm surprised.
I
Kids
got the
don't eat it.
ingredients from the Hasbro company. Yeah, it is 100% pure challah. It's
Okay,
challah.
well,
It's colored
I
challah.
usually like to play with Play-Doh on Pesach.
Yeah.
No more. I'm not playing with Play-Doh anymore.
No, I saw a promotional video of them saying it's safe for kids. The person went ahead and baked like a years old, Play-Dohs and turned them into cookies and ate them, and they were delicious. I mean, I didn't taste them. We
Got some other sort of yucky ingredients, though. Chemicals.
No, there's no chemicals. I'm telling you.
There's no chemicals in
No,
Play-Doh
look
at
it
all?
up. They can't because it's kids
Kids
eat
stuff.
Kids use it.
Kids don't. They eat it. They don't just use it. They eat it. They eat Play-Doh. Okay.
They eat anything.
Barbecue. Many people like making barbecues on Pesach. This is
Yes.
something I brought up last year. I didn't see really anyone who discussed this till this date. I did send this information to a number of hashgacha companies, and that is as follows. Barbecue coals. So the coals, the charcoal. There's a difference between what's called charcoal and charcoal briquettes and lump charcoal. Lump charcoal is not a problem. It's just pieces of wood that you don't have to worry about.
What?
Lump charcoal is cut wood. It's dry pieces of wood that you can use. You can get without hashgacha. You don't need any supervision on that. It's not. Don't worry about that. It's just dry wood. But the charcoal, what we can call the ground charcoal, which is basically made, they grind wood and they add starch as a binder to make those briquettes, which is
Really?
charcoal briquettes. Yes, absolutely. They use starch. So starch, as we know, can come from corn or can come from wheat. Some companies use a wheat-based starch. Some companies use a corn-based starch.
How do you know?
How do you know? So I sent an email for example, to the company called Kingsford, which is the number one manufacturer of charcoal in the United States. They carry 80% of the market in the United States of charcoal. They are corn-based, not chametz based. As I said, they wrote to me, we're only corn-based, but by the way, we're not taking any
responsibility.
Because
Yeah,
for
but even if it's corn-based, could you use it on Pesach?
of course, why not?
You're cooking with it?
No, but okay. So the issue here is it's definitely not edible. So it falls again under all the heterim we said before. It falls under all of them. The only thing is that maybe here we say achshaveh. Maybe here we say since when a person decides to barbecue meat, it's not like back in the day where barbecue was pretty much your only way of cooking. You cook with direct fire. But today we barbecue because we like the taste the barbecue gives. So and they make special coals to give special good taste to the product, to the food, to the meat.
Hickory flavor. Hickory flavor they have that.
No, but even if it's not flavored, people like the charcoal, the burnt, the smoked
that's right.
food. So if you're doing that, you're benefiting from you're eating. You're intending to eat the flavor of the charcoal. So this is a svar. I'm not so sure about it. It's still in question. But nonetheless, because it's not something that's clear, it's definitely better to avoid getting charcoal that you don't know what starch was used. As I said, you can either get the lump charcoal. The Eidach does also have with a hashgacha, so you can get theirs that has a hashgacha. Charcoal, yes. They have theirs with hashgacha, which makes sure that it's not a problematic starch. If it's a kidney starch, it's for sure not a problem. We don't apply these rules to kidneys. It's not a problem whatsoever. The problem would only be if it's made from a wheat-based starch. So I already said in the United States, 80% of it is okay, but here in Israel we receive from many different companies and we don't know. You have to, South Africa, Europe, Africa, you have to check out. Okay, based on what we discussed regarding starch, we'll discuss now regarding a few things. Anything that may have starch in it, which there are plenty of products such as paperware, tissues, paper napkins, paper rolls, paper lining, plastic gloves, and tablecloths, all those things plus more may have starch on them. Starch, as we already mentioned, may come from chametz. According to Rav Lando, who I spoke to recently, he said majority of the world's starch comes from chametz. I don't know how he got those numbers. From my research, the majority of the world's starch comes from corn, but there is significant amount of starch that does come from chametz.
What do you do about it?
So what do you do about it? So because of this, basically, you have a few choices. All these things, anything that will come into contact, well, they will not come into contact with food, who cares? So it has starch, so what? So what? Let it have starch. I'm not eating it. There's no owning prohibition on starch. We discussed this, I believe, a few weeks ago. It's the same idea as a laundry starch that you use to starch your clothing to iron. It doesn't have an isser of owning, just an isser of eating. So if it's toilet paper, wash your hands after you go to the bathroom. Don't lick your fingers after you go to the bathroom. That's it. So don't do that. But if it's something that may come into contact with food, such as napkins,
Like a tablecloth.
a tablecloth, there may be even tissues, around the table, paper rolls, paper lining, plastic gloves that you use because you don't want to get your hands dirty. Some people are machmir. Some people are machmir. They will not touch any food with their bare hands because who knows where their hands have been. So they use gloves. They don't realize that they're getting direct chametz onto the food. If the gloves have a chametz-based starch, what they're doing is putting chametz on all their foods. Yes. So because of this, you can do the following. Number one, you do have all these products available with a hashkafa, giving their certification that it is free of any chametz-based starch. Kidneys, by the way, they don't care. They don't care if it has kidneys-based starch. As I already mentioned, they don't care about that. There's no concept of achshave by that or an isser of eating by that. It's only by chametz-based starch. So they make sure it doesn't have chametz-based starch, or you can do it yourself. You can test yourself to see if there's starch on a product, and what Rav Lando told me to do is that you take some iodine, such as Paladin, which contains iodine in it. You can get Paladin for 10 shekel in a pharmacy. You put it in some water, put in a bucket of water, dip your tissue, testing tissue into it. If the tissue turns blue, this is a starch tissue. If it doesn't turn blue, it doesn't have starch in it. And that's how he said you can check everything you want.
But even so, if it's toilet paper, it doesn't make any difference.
Toilet paper, we don't care, but let's say it's plastic gloves.
Put it in water.
Water that contains iodine.
So
Paladin.
Cups,
Paladin? They make it in Israel for...
So it has to turn blue?
It's an ointment for burns, against burns.
Yeah, the iodine.
Yeah. It's
So-
called Paladin here in Israel.
So cups would be really important then, the plastic and the...
Absolutely.
and the
Plastic,
coffee cups,
I
coffee
haven't
cups.
heard that plastic contains a starch issue. Only paper.
Coffee cups. Like
Only
the
paper.
Hot cups.
Hot coffee cups.
Hot cups. So either get with a hashkach or check. Check.
And that works as far as the polydine works, whether
Yeah,
it's
that's what he told me to do.
Whether it's wheat starch or cornstarch.
Well, yeah, it won't tell you what starch it is, but it'll tell you if there's starch.
So once you know
So
it's
if you
starch,
know there's starch, then you can go to the next step. Call up the company, find out from them what kind of starch they use.
what
That
does
would
call
be
the
next
company
step.
begin with then?
They don't have a
It
phone
probably
number.
may be easier just to use the iodine. It's not a big deal. You take a few drops of iodine, you put it into a cup that has water in it. If the cup turns blue, it's starched up. If it doesn't turn blue, it's not a problem.
Plastic utensils, not a problem like
I
plastic
haven't
cup?
heard of there being an issue in
With
plastic.
plastic utensils.
They don't put, as far as I know, they don't put. I'm talking about plastic paper plates, plastic plates, not plastic paper, plastic plates and cutlery. But plastic tablecloths, yes, that could be an issue. And as we already said, plastic gloves, that is definitely
Why
an
don't they
issue.
put these transparent plastic to put over the tablecloth, as we just said?
Yeah. So
So
as
you
we
have
said,
to see if it has
either get with an ishur or do the test. Just simply do the test. That's the
Like
best thing.
rubber
Do the
gloves.
test.
Rubber gloves, you mean, like the rubber
gloves,
dishwasher.
latex
You can
gloves.
they sell gloves without any starch on them. There are people allergic to starches, they sell without starches. You can get starchless gloves.
So if you have latex gloves that has
Right.
a hashkacha, kosher Pesach,
Yeah,
that's okay.
of course, that's what they did. They hopefully verified that it doesn't have a problematic starch. That's why it has it. Okay, well, this took a while. We'll have to continue next week.
So we're going to continue next week?
Why not?
Or not?
Okay, very close to the...
Pesach is coming. We no longer have time to prepare for Pesach. We need to have 2 classes.
Okay,
next
so
week.
I said something about it.
When is Yud Aleph?
About kidney.
Yeah.
When is Yud Aleph?
What's that? I just want to make sure for next week. Do we have a crowd for next week? People are going to
Why not? When is Yud Aleph, though? It's Yud Aleph.
Okay, fine. Fine.
I don't know when I'm gonna
Okay,
be open.
I'll redo the message. Today I said it
In
was the
Misham,
last
we
one.
still have left
There's
to
supposed to
do.
be a Fabrengen Yud Aleph on Tuesday, no?
It's supposed to be. We don't necessarily have one here all the time on Yud Aleph. In the community there is, for sure. Many things going on, but
You're not having a Fabrengen
our
Yud Aleph?
institution is not always having a Yud Aleph. Is it Yud Aleph next week? It is, isn't it?
Huh?
7 days. It's the 4. It's 5 tonight.
days, yeah.
7 more days is
12.
Yeah, it's Yud Aleph. Next Tuesday is Yud Aleph.
The night.
The night?
No,
Well,
actually it's
Monday
Yud
night.
Bet.
Monday night is.
Monday night is Yud
But
Aleph.
the Fabrengen usually is on
The
Tuesday.
next
Well,
night.
there's all kinds of things going on in the community, and people go to, I've gone to Tel Aviv before for big rallies and all sorts of things, and Yud Aleph, so.
You can make a Fabrengen.
Who wants to come? You guys want to come?
Pesach
You're the core
with
group.
Matzot.
You want to be here? You want to be here?
Sure, it was my wife.
Even if there's 4 people, 5 people, I guess it's worth it, right?
Well, make a Fabrengen out of it.
I don't know if I have the energy to do that next week, or whatever.
Well, you don't have any.
We were just talking about having a class. Are we still on live?
Yeah.
I can turn it off.
The
We
rest of
still
the
have to
world
cover,
is
we still have to
interested
cover
in what we're
medicine.
going to do.
We still have to cover medicine,
Yeah.
kidneys, which I
Medicine.
thought we would do today, but we got carried away with the
Okay.
starches.
We do think-
Kidneys, and maybe, I was actually thinking maybe of having an open discussion class, meaning people
Yeah.
come
Questions.
ready, prepare through this week your questions, and then address your questions.
Yeah.
Anything that's improved by Kupat Kulim, they have like things that they
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
Oh, that's another thing.
is kosher to Pesach, you can
Need a
smoke
Facebook
on it.
crowd, or not really?
Those are
This is
the
all
No, it's,
different.
no,
links.
it's on
So Rabbi,
YouTube.
I just
Yeah,
have
but
two
who
questions
knows
about
it was on?
getting
Like,
it.
they're not on
Which
Facebook.
nuts
Wait,
are
you
okay?
call, I have Maccabi.
You put it on Unity for the Community.
So I get it to Maccabi, and
So
what
that
happens?
crowd knew that they wanted.
They have a list.
Like people like
Go
Mo.
onto their list.
But what about all
Which
the
nuts you're asking?
They don't.
Can you eat? Yeah.
All nuts, all sides for peanuts are not considered, are not
Your mother
considered
doesn't.
kidneys.
All
Nuts
but
grow on
peanuts.
trees.
Yeah,
I go to tell them.
The only thing that some are annoying,
No, she wouldn't bother. It's just Facebook is just.
I have a mazel tov for the Yom Haledes.
Nice calf.
It's my father-in-law's Yom Haledes birthday
Well, who's this?
tonight.
Your father?
No, my father-in-law.
Oh.
What do you,
This is your birthday tonight?
did you go into